Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PopHeadz podcast. This is your host, Eric, aka Ghost Rider. In this episode, I want to talk about Launchpads and our search for one. I'll reveal who we've selected, why, and maybe have a surprise interview as well. But first, a history lesson. So if you don't know, in Solana, for NFTs, there is a minting standard called the Candy Machine. Essentially, it's a program that was created by Metaplex to standardize the minting of NFTs. A little bit of history: when Solana NFTs had just started, the way minting was done was you sent Sol to a designated wallet or address, and then you hoped that you would get back an NFT. That is until the degenerate Ape Academy mint. What happened was the minting contract messed up, and for that project, Metaplex stepped in and created the Candy Machine program in order to help facilitate the mint and ensure that it ran smoothly. There was a lot at stake in terms of creating and providing open source code for the L1 chain that would promote and encourage NFTs and projects to come. Now, once that was a success, the Candy Machine program became the new standard with which Solana NFTs minted. True to its name, it's like a candy machine. You put a coin in and you get some candy, and you put in Sol and you get an NFT. Now, back then, the Candy Machine was V1, version 1, and it had a very glaring issue, which was botting and being able to track the rares in the collection. Now, that whole history with Candy Machine V1 led to the exiled apes, and also kind of the standard way of minting, which was this open source repo that you forked and then launched if you wanted to set up a mint site. But the Degeneraverse's second collection, the Degenerate Trash Pandas, exposed the issue with V1 in a big way, when during the mint we saw wallets would be able to get all of the rares and mythics in the collection during the mint, and a lot of things set the scene for it. Whitelist tokens, cheap mint price, a large collection, slow mint. Suffice to say that the botting incident and subsequent botting incidents led to the creation of Candy Machine V2, which has enhanced features to kind of randomize the order of the mint and help prevent some botting. Now, what a Launchpad is they will help you set up a Candy Machine and mint site for you, usually for upfront fees and sometimes be included in the royalties. Each Launchpad has its own pros and cons beyond just setting up a Candy Machine. Back during Candy Machine V1 days, it was standard for projects to set up their own mint site instead of using Launchpad and using, that open source code that was forked and then launched on Versal. Launchpad started forming, I would say, near the mid to end of life for Candy Machine V1, particularly Magic Eden's. But what ended up happening was the botting situation got so tremendously horrendous that it had to change. Now, botting is 100% still an issue and will continue to be an issue forever. The current whitelist meta that nobody likes is because of botting. I do wish to go back to the old days of public mint and everybody can just mint without having to whitelist grind. I mean, PopHeadz has whitelist, but I do miss those old days. Now, that being said, Launchpads today have some botting prevention features as a pro, but let's take a look at the different dimensions that we took a look at when deciding which Launchpad to go with. Number one, and this is probably the biggest thing that projects will look for, is upfront cost. Now, what will it cost to use their Launchpad? It is usually a percentage of mint, and I won't go into the individual numbers of each Launchpad, but basically they range from 2 to 3% of mint all the way up to 9 to 10%. And number two, downstream cost. So that was upfront cost. Downstream cost. Will the Launchpad require us to put them on the royalties? So some of the Launchpads that we talk to do require that they be included in the royalties on top of the upfront cost of the mint. And some Launchpads do not require that. It's something to consider. Number three, is assistance with marketing and exposure. You could argue that Magic projects that go to Magic Eden, for example, are mostly looking for assistance with marketing and exposure. Um, and so usually Magic Eden has the highest cost to use them, but they usually have the best marketing and exposure. I don't know if that's still the case, but that is something that projects will, um, you know, highly consider because minting out is kind of important. Number 4, long-term relationship post mint. Is it just a transactional one-off relationship, or are we going to build a relationship long-term? You help launch the project, and then we continue to work together, that type of thing. Number 5 is established trust. Do we know the people who are running the Launchpad? Are they friends? Have we worked with you before? That type of thing. And number 6 is technical savviness. Is the dev team that is helping with the launch technically savvy? Now, in Solana, there are several launch pads, right? There's Magic Eden is the biggest, Saltport, Blocksmith, and a few other ones like Secret Sphinx, Monkey Labs, etc. I did take a look at all of them, and I did compare them using those kind of 6 dimensions. And there's a lot to think about in choosing. And the team went back and forth with several launch pads and constantly second-guessed ourselves as the crypto meta kept changing. And at some points, we just wanted to set up our own minting site and candy machine ourselves. But today, I am pleased to announce that given all of those dimensions, there was kind of a serendipitous moment that led us to choose Form Function as our launch partner. Now, this is an incredibly out of left field announcement, given that Form Function isn't a traditional NFT marketplace launchpad, and is a one-of-one art marketplace. So, how in the world did we even get here? Well, I have a recorded discussion to share with me and Magellan, who is the head of comms, community, and marketing over at Form Function, that goes over in more detail how this came about and what it's going to look like. I hope you'll enjoy. Well, the news is out. Form Function will be our launch partner for PopHeadz, and with me today, I actually have Magellan as a guest to help kind of walk us through what it means and talk about it. Magellan is Form Function's community manager. Magellan, do you want to give us a little bit of intro about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Magellan. Yeah, I'm head of community and marketing with Form Function, and we are a platform on Solana that's built to support independent artists and creators, and really excited to be helping launch PopHeadz. From my own background, I actually have a research background in UX and UI research for virtual reality and mobile applications. I got my PhD in cognitive psychology before transitioning fully into Web3, and have been involved in Web3 as an investor since around 2017, but also in Solana since the really early days before Metaplex Standard, around January 2021, when it was really just Solid's Phantom didn't even exist. So I've seen a lot of great things and rugs as well. And so that brought me to really believing in the Solana ecosystem being around so long and seeing how quickly it was growing, and helped Form Function launch this year in February. And yeah, now that brings us here to helping launch PopHeadz, which is a really exciting time for us, and one that we're excited to help out with.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro. And just to, I didn't know how long you were in Solana for. Did you actually? So your trademark PFP is actually the Skelly, SMB Solana Monkey business. Did you actually mint that, or did you buy that on secondary?
I did mint this actually. I literally minted this for 2 Sol when Sol was like, I think at the time it would have been 20 something, or maybe 20 something dollars, I think, or maybe 30 something. It was kind of the mini bear market in summer, and it was one of the first real mints on Solana, along with like DJ and Ape Academy. There's a few others before that, but it was actually pretty sketchy. The devs had like written a script to
Oh yeah, the old days.
send the monkeys to people, and so you're kind of just waiting there, hoping that you got your thing. But yeah, I got really lucky, and really, it's kind of crazy how people just started to recognize me by this PFP, and then kind of took off from there, and getting really involved in the ecosystem, and even in the early Monkey DAO days. Helping them kind of get off with nothing in an official capacity, but just spreading the word about what we were kind of building there.
Okay, cool. And just to give context to everybody, so our project, PopHeadz, is led by kind of three artists, Daniel, Joyce, and Tony, who have mostly centered around Solana one-of-one art. And most of their work is sold on Fofu's platform. Fofu being form function. That's just a nickname. Have you heard of all the nicknames? There's Fofu. For Fun is also another one.
I have not heard For Fun, actually. That's new.
For Fun.
Fofu, absolutely.
But yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into the one-of-one art scene? And then I'll lead into talking about more how PopHeadz and Fofu got partnered together.
Yeah, definitely. Do you mean me personally or Form Function?
Yeah.
Or kind of both? Okay.
Yeah, so you personally, because I know Form Function had launched by kind of Cat and Pencil Flip, and then you had joined in after. So just wanted to get a little bit of background of actually how you ended up joining Form Function.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to give some more context. So really kind of bringing back to the PFP side, like you're saying that I minted the Skelly Monkey, and I actually, my initial exposure to Solana was really through that, but what did draw me to it was really the incredible sense of community. And I know it's kind of a meme at this point, right? The name of community, or people saying community, oh, it's for the community, but it really was something. It felt like something special, like part of a movement. And really a lot of us, like in these early days, there was like A2K who's with Exchange, or like Soul Big Brain, Celon, like a lot of these people who were pretty established builders or influencers now. We were all in the Discord. It was like 50 of us basically, and we all knew each other and giving each other alpha for different mints and the kind of degen side of things. And it felt like a really exciting time. This broadly grew me to initially become like more of this influencer role. I was like trying to give people alpha about mints and kind of help them out, but I quickly became uncomfortable with this role because it did come from a genuine place, but I didn't want people to be making any sort of decisions because I was excited about something, like a mint or whatever it was. So that led me more towards the one-of-one art scene, which kind of kicked off along with Metaplex Standard and Holoplex coming out. That would have been around September or so 2021, where it started off as just a few of us, and really it was maybe again like 20 to 40 or 50 of us just in the trenches, like on these really early protocols that were pretty rough around the edges to use, essentially a beta or alpha versions of things. And you even had to deploy like a GitHub to set up a Metaplex and like a server on Versal, and all these steps that, if you're a non-technical person, was a little bit daunting maybe, even if it was point and click, or, even if you just had to fork some code. So I got in the trenches a bit, and I actually started releasing a little bit of my own art in that group and got to know the artists. And I was like, oh, you know what? Like this, I like this a lot better than this other sort of role I was playing. And I'm not so much interested in minting anymore, the PFP side, but more so getting to know these other artists, and there's some cool things going on here, and there's people collecting and supporting individuals too, as well as like bigger projects. And so I released some of my own art, both a little bit of my photography, and then also some I actually made some generative, like procedural art, like geometric style mandalas as well, and had like a little bit of success with that, like selling those and meeting some awesome people that way. And then really the scene just started taking off with Exchange Art coming through. That would have been around October, I believe. Exchange Art launched, and it's like, oh wow, now there's a whole dedicated marketplace for this, and this just got me excited. I got really lucky. I collected John Lay's first collection 001 as well, so I started collecting. And so
Jeez.
yeah, I just got incredibly lucky in that sense. And people say, "Oh, did you know?" No, I didn't know. I just liked the art. I liked John, so I got lucky with like a couple of early John pieces collecting, and it was kind of addicting collecting. And I remember, someone who was early to Solana, I had some Solana, to burn, and also I wanted to give back a little bit to people, and so I started to take collecting pretty seriously in those early days, and I would get really into the auctions and all this. So it was just like a bit of fun. It really, like you said, for fun with form function, but there is an element to the one-of-one art and like supporting independent artists and collecting as well that really hooked me. And so both as a collector and artist, I got really hooked. And then, I guess from there to kind of shorten it and get to the current day. That was really when I started to enjoy doing that as like much more time of my day. And it started as something I was doing at night, but started to bleed into my regular job. At the time, I was actually helping part-time for Magica Labs, who some people might be familiar with. They do some NFT project management tools, and I was doing some part-time community marketing for them at night on top of my regular job. And then I started searching. I was like, you know what? I actually want to do this full time. I really enjoy it. It started to really distract me at my regular job of research, and I just like the pace of it all. And it just so happened that Form Function had just been announced, and I checked out their UI UX and their website and their clean design, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually amazing. It seemed like way above a lot of different products that I had seen on Solana, especially for an early stage product. Just seemed really mature and clean. And so it's actually funny, when I first saw that they announced, I quote tweeted their announcement of that they were coming to Solana, and I was like, oh, this like looks really amazing, really clean, and the product looks great. I just wonder how they're going to handle community, and because that's so important here. And so somehow that ended up coming full circle. Actually, just essentially went on their Discord, like cold DM Catherine, and applied to their open community position, and kind of the stars aligned there. And one thing I would say is that, of course, a lot of people say good things about the product and the use and the UX of Form Function, but something that was really important to me was when I met the co-founders, Matt and Catherine. They're Pencil Flip and Petrachurate on Twitter. Just meeting them and getting to know them as people. Not only were they really smart, hardworking, and driven, but they, as founders, are really in the trenches with us as well. And that mattered a lot to me. And they're really just good people that want to see artists succeed, and that kind of messaging and mission of the company resonated with me. And that process came together really quickly. We definitely aligned on kind of the vision for Form Function and what I could bring to the team. And so I joined them just before the launch in February, and have been involved now for about a half year, helping them build out social media, marketing, and partnerships.
Awesome. Thank you for all of that context. I think it's gonna give a lot of good feedback, I guess background on how this partnership came to be. So once you became community manager for Form Function, and I know you've been grinding that out, doing the Twitter Spaces and all of that. Let me see. Sorry, when PopHeadz. So just to give some context, Joyce, I believe Joyce and Tony were both part of Form Function's second wave of artists. I know they had the first wave with like Rachel, Spooky Daikon.
That's right.
Yeah, and then so Joyce and Tony were in that second wave. Daniel came after when you had implemented kind of the voting system. But so when we announced PopHeadz, right, you've been hanging around the Discord, being super cool and friendly. And then one day you were just like, hey, what if Fofu was the launch partner? So at the time, on our side, we were looking for a launch partner, and it genuinely had never crossed our minds Fofu was an option. So when we got in DMs and talked about it with the whole crew, I mean, I think the artists were ecstatic, especially Joyce. She was like instant yes. Can we please work with friends? I think obviously, I mean, if we can work with friends, we would prefer to work with friends that we already know. I mean, because we are friends. There's a whole soju meme. y'all have met each other at the last NFT NYC, in person. So there's that as well. But can you actually talk about how, like, what was the conversation like? How was it brought up? Did you go to Kat and Pencil and were like, yo, let's help launch PopHeadz, or like what was that process like? Because genuinely we didn't have Fofu in our sets because we didn't think that that was going to be a thing, like an option.
Yeah, it's actually. So first of all, I'm really glad it came together. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of story. And yeah, like you said, this we had some good times with soju in New York City. They may or may not have cut off our beer supply at Korean barbecue. Still unconfirmed, details fuzzy. But getting back to your question, it's interesting because we had kind of had an existential moment at NFT NYC where we were like trying to find our sort of aha moment, right, as a platform. And one of the things that came up was the incredible demand that the PopHeadz banners had, because at that time you all had announced that you were going to launch a PFP generative project and a larger scale project after Dan had had some initial success. And the idea had kind of crystallized together with you, Joyce, Tony, and Jiacheng. And so this came up in our meeting, and at the time, I had actually, they were like, oh, well, would PopHeadz even want to launch with us? This was back in NFT NYC time, so over the summer. And at the time, I just like, I didn't know really how to approach Dan about it. And it was interesting because I also had a similar thing as you. I was like, oh, we wouldn't launch that, right? Like in my head. And so when I approached Dan initially, actually, I don't even think he realized I was essentially asking that. I basically messaged him in a cold message, and I was like, hey, like, let us know if Form Function can help out in any other way, like, kind of like trying to lead him down that path. But I didn't really ask it explicitly at first. So essentially, then I came back to our team. They're like, oh, Kat and Pencil were kind of interested in it, or at least interested in seeing how you all felt about it. And Kat and Pencil were like, oh, I guess they're not interested. Like, I told them that. I was like, oh, yeah, they don't really seem like that stoked, and it doesn't really seem like a possibility. So it just kind of fell flat, in my opinion, and we just like left it for a while. And then I started to get to know you all, and for us as a platform, we had built campaigns. Not that PopHeadz is a campaign, but the idea being that we wanted to support larger scale projects was coming more into our long-term vision as a platform. And so in that sense, we were like, oh, maybe actually we could support something the scale of PopHeadz. And so I just kind of threw it out there in Discord that one day. And I had also been getting to know the artists much better, after meeting Joyce, especially in New York, and really connecting with her and some of the other artists on our platform. It just made sense to at least ask explicitly you all that it was a possibility. And interestingly, actually, Pencil Flip, who's our CTO, Chief Technology Officer, was actually interested in building some sort of generative tooling. And he had done that in the past for a previous project. And so he had that interest anyway. And so I just threw it out there. I was like, you know what, it's been some time since I initially kind of indirectly floated it to Dan. But now I can just ask directly and just put it out into the universe, especially as I gotten to know you all better. And it's funny, it's a good reminder, like, if you do want something, just ask directly. And if the answer is no, it's no, and you kind of move on. But you can never know unless you ask directly. Because I had the sense in my head that, I had sort of asked and it's not going to happen. But just going at it a little more directly worked out. But yeah, from our end, it came together pretty quickly. And then actually, I proposed the idea to you all before I had even mentioned it to Matt and Catherine at all. Like, I literally just put it out there. And then I came back to them and I was like, hey, PopHeadz might actually be interested in launching with us. What do you all think? And I put together a proposal of like the pros and cons and, from like a kind of product vision perspective. And we kind of had a team analysis of it in a meeting. And, went through that whole process of aligning with you all and meeting multiple times. And yeah, really happy to say that it worked out. And yeah, I'm happy to give more context. That's kind of like how it came together.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So let's actually go over the details of this launch partnership as to what it is and what it isn't. So Fofu is helping us set up the our candy machine and our mint page, which will be on Form Function. I mean, fundamentally, that's the crux of it. I do want to share though that that does not necessarily mean Fofu is becoming a launch pad like Emmy or Blocksmith, or will be kind of the place for secondaries. I imagine most people will still want to list on their preferred marketplace. That being said, you can list on Fofu if you'd like. Um, Fundamentally though, this kind of partnership is Fofu trying to Farm Function trying to help support creators in a bigger capacity. I know there's a couple other initiatives you're doing, like one with campaigns, one with campaigns that I'm blanking on the name. I think Robbie, yeah. Uh, so yeah. When you did campaigns, it kind of made a lot of sense for a creative who wanted a little bit more funding than just selling art and have a specific goal. I think the Robbie Showstone one was a good example of that. And you had recently announced that you were doing creative grants as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have this creative residency where we'll actually pay artists for 2 months a USD salary of $7,000, so 3,500 a month, to kickstart a campaign or some sort of dream project that will actually essentially fund the first portion, and then they will fund the rest of it through NFTs using a campaign on our platform. So yeah, we just kick
Yeah,
that off, and we'll accept 3 to 6 artists for that. But yeah, that's an exciting time for us, definitely. So we get a lot of exciting things coming. Absolutely.
yeah. So I just want to provide the context to the people that are listening. This isn't
Oh,
Form
now
Function is
we're
not becoming like a secondary marketplace for degen trading or anything like that. This is more increasing. I mean, I'll let you speak in your words, but to me, it was I got the sense that it was more Form Function doubling down on kind of their mission of helping artists, and creatives be able to go full time with NFTs and Web3 and explore all the new creative possibilities at a greater capacity. This is what I got from the partnership. Do you want to speak a little bit about kind of how we're going to launch this, and then what it is and what it isn't for Form Function? Because I know once the news comes out, there'd be a little like a decent amount of questions
there'll be
probably.
some questions. There'll be some questions, definitely. I think that's very reasonable and expected, and we of course want to clarify things and let our core community, of independent creators who maybe don't want to do a dream project or a larger project, that we're still there for them and we're going to continue supporting them just as much. Absolutely. I would say in that sense, our team is viewing Form Function as pretty multidimensional and adaptive. And the main reason for supporting you all is the sort of framing of the project, where it really is an artist-led project. You're building this artist-first brand where the artists have creative control, and in our understanding, they'll receive the majority of the funds from Mint, which is quite different from a lot of PFP and generative projects where maybe a few devs hire like paid artists a pittance from Fiverr on a consulting fee, and then they make all the money. So in that sense, it's a lot more equitable for the artists, and we're excited to support that sort of thing, where they have a lot more control in the project. And a few other comments quickly to what you touched on before we get into the sort of how we'll implement it, is that we will still support secondary if people want, but yeah, of course, expect people to use their preferred marketplace. One thing I will say that is a strength of our marketplace is that we do escrowless listings. So if you do take an escrowless approach, or you wanted to like potentially list across multiple marketplaces or use an aggregator like Hyperspace, we could be included in that umbrella of marketplaces, which I think is pretty cool if you did want to use us for secondary. Even though that won't be like, it's not like we're going to build that out significantly, but we will add some small improvements, both for artists and for projects like PopHeadz. Just to comment on that briefly. And then from our end, kind of two things you touched on. One first is related to campaigns. So of course, PopHeadz is not a campaign; it's a PFP project. But we actually we wanted to build in the possibility of using a generative or a larger mint project for a campaign in the future. So we view this as, even though PopHeadz is not a campaign, we view it as potentially interesting to do sort of generative projects to raise for campaigns as a potential interesting mechanism. Well, it doesn't have to be 10K, it can be whatever kind of scale that seems reasonable for the scope of the project. But in that sense, we wanted to have the optionality for people to use this to build out essentially a community behind some sort of project, whether that's a book, a film, a game, whatever it is. So in that sense, this is a tool that, even though we're not expecting to support, like you mentioned, a ton of these or become like a massive Launchpad or something like that, to at least have the option for creators who are running a campaign in the future to do this is definitely something that we wanted. Secondarily, I would also say that we view it as an opportunity to actually onboard potential collectors to our platform to support artists as well, and independent artists. So the idea being that maybe someone creates an account on our website for the first time to mint PopHeadz, and now they actually turn into art supporters and collectors more broadly. And I think there's a lot of room for involving and kind of supplementing our current collectors with people that are maybe involved in the PFP side, but have not gotten exposure, or for whatever reason have not checked out our platform or just not collected art yet. I think, we've seen with Exchange, for example, they've supported like the DGen Ape crate auctions and some things for DGen Trash Panda, partnered with DGods, things like this. And there's a lot of room for having at least a niche sort of role for PFPs and generative projects in the one-of-one art side. It doesn't mean that we're going to just become Magic Eden now, or become the next like just generative only, or just start launching a bunch of things just to get money. All it means is that we view it as a nice supplement to what we have going currently, both to bring in new people and to try something different, and think bigger, I think, long term. So in that sense, it's not going to take over. It's just viewed as a kind of supplement. And don't flood my DMs asking to launch your generative project now, please.
You don't want to launch Boryoku Mindfolk? Come on.
So that's just some context there. So hopefully that answers the question. I'm sure there'll be more, but we'll definitely do some spaces and things to clarify anything that is an open question. Absolutely.
Yeah, and to that point, when we got the initial proposal, obviously it was kind of wrapped around the campaign wrapper. I do want to point out that I think what this conversation should do, if you are an artist or creative listening, is kind of expand the possibilities rather than think that, oh, Fofu is getting into generatives. It's not really that's not really the message that should be taken. I think it's more that to Magellan's point, this obviously crypto is highly adaptive. Obviously in the one-of-one space right now, at least in Solana, there's currently a additions meta going on. Things are always changing. I think if you're a creative, the takeaway should be that it doesn't just have to be additions or one-of-ones. Fundamentally, it can be anything, and there will be more stuff going on around the campaign feature that Fofu has. I know you had showed. Obviously, I'm not gonna talk about what was shown, like the new features and stuff you had thought about for campaigns. But from what I saw, Fofu wants to kind of offload some of the, I would say, community management stuff that a lot of artists have to do solo. Managing their own Twitter, Discord, community, etc. is a little bit of a headache, especially for an artist who just wants to do art. From what I saw in that kind of campaign wrapper, that they are thinking about features to help artists grow their community with a lot less work and less technical knowledge needed. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Magellan, or it's still under works.
I would say it's still under work, but I could briefly comment on the fact that, like, I think as a long-term vision, for one is we want to help artists make a living in whichever way they choose, whether that is selling one-off pieces or a series or building their dream projects. And then related to making a living, we eventually want to become kind of a one-stop shop for independent artists, in terms of what you mentioned, helping with community management, whether that's just giving updates to folks or sending something like an airdrop or interacting with the community in a more intimate way. I think that's something we've definitely seen in crypto especially, and I think it's true for artists everywhere, but it's really sped up in the age of the internet, is that there is this expectation of some sort of interaction or some sort of marketing element to the artist's work. And what I heard actually Brick asked that he mentioned, he's like, how will people know about your work if you don't tell them? And I think that's a healthy way of thinking about it. And so we want to facilitate that a bit better, make managing things like your personal Discord or just updates to holders a lot easier. So I would say on our long-term vision, I won't give too many details. I don't want to spoil anything, but kind of our long-term vision is becoming this one-stop shop for artists and for potentially bigger projects, like a card game or a movie or whatever it might be.
Awesome. So yeah, I think that's it. I think that's enough context. Obviously, we will have some follow-up information to go along with this if people would prefer to read or go on Twitter Spaces. We're going to do one of those as well. But yeah, I'm super happy to announce that Form Function is our launch partner. Definitely out of left field for a lot of people when they hear it.
From the top
and we are actually super pleased about it, and happy to see where this goes.
Yeah, definitely. We're really excited as well. Super excited to be working together. Our devs are plugging along, building it as we speak. And one thing I would say is, if you do, even though Eric mentioned about, we're not going to become a Launchpad only, I think we are thinking about if there are potentially other projects that are artists first and art first. On the generative side, we're willing to listen. And so we're not trying to launch a bunch at once or anything or make this the primary focus of our platform, but definitely open to the possibility of supporting some others. But just throw that out there as well. But otherwise, just to close, all I would say is that, we're not going away for independent artists. We're still going to be there supporting you and building great UX for you all. So don't worry about that. We'll still be there, both from a marketing perspective and a usage perspective on the product side. And thanks a lot, Eric, for having me on. It's been awesome to talk with you. I'm really excited to be launching PopHeadz for you all.
And that's it. We're excited to be working with Form Function on this as our launch partner and see how this mint will go. Also, pleased to announce that our mint date plan is sometime the first week of November 2022. I have been told that is during Breakpoint Lisbon, so we're still finalizing a hard date, but our mint is just around the corner. As of recording this, it is September 25th, 2022, so we have just about a month left. I hope you'll stay tuned as I have more exciting news to share and a few more of these podcast episodes to do before mint. Thank you, and hope to see you again.